This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Getting down to the end of July, heading into August long weekend tomorrow. And a little bit of a slow period on the NHL calendar, although a signing that probably made a few Jet fans groan last night elsewhere in the National Hockey League. We'll talk about that in a minute. But lots coming up on today's show. It's been a minute since we talked Blue Jays. And the Jays are hot right now. Last night's loss to the St. Louis Cardinals notwithstanding. So I'm looking forward to catching up with Keegan Matheson again and having Keegan back on the program. We'll discuss the Jays at this point in the season, how they're looking heading into the trade deadline, and just discuss the performance of the team overall, as well as the impact of the new manager, John Schneider, who took over just a couple weeks ago in Toronto. We'll certainly hit the National Hockey League offseason. Latest on the Jets and elsewhere around the league. Brandon Rewucki will pop on. And then later on in the program, after Bomber practice, Patty the Batty himself, Pat Neufeld of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, is going to join us. Good news, Pat was back on the field today in practice and looks to be a player in that big game coming up on Saturday night with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers taking on the Calgary Stampeders. And as promised yesterday, shout out to our good friends at Canadian Club. Got a couple pairs of tickets for Valor FC to give away. We'll fire up the wheel of winners a little bit later on after our guests and send a couple folks out to the game on Saturday afternoon. And Saturday should be a great day. Valor game at 2 p.m. at home. And then everyone will find a good spot, 6 p.m., to watch the Winnipeg Blue Bombers take on the Calgary Stampeders. And in the meantime, Gold Eyes at home, big win last night against the Chicago Dogs. They're back at it again tonight. And then the Lake County Doghounds coming in on the weekend. So plenty of great sporting options, despite the Bombers being on the road with the local soccer team and baseball team over the next few days. A big shout out to all the sponsors that make Winnipeg Sports Talk happen each and every day. Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Wallace & Wallace, Vita Health, F Apparel, Aikens Lake, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Breezy Bend, Not AutoCorp, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, and of course our friends at Assiniboia Downs, who, by the way, right now, would have loved to have been out there previewing the big Manitoba Derby coming up on Monday. We'll hopefully have Darren Dunn jump on the program tomorrow and give us the lay of the land for the biggest race of the year out at Assiniboia Downs. But without further ado, before we get to a little Blue Jays baseball talk with Keegan Matheson, then Brandon and Pat Neufeld, let's get Michael Remis here to get things going. What's going on?
Yeah, big sports weekend. Shout out to the chat. People mentioning SummerSlam on Saturday and also UFC.
How could I have forgot that?
Yeah,
How could I have forgot
UFC,
that?
There's big UFC too. So there is a big long weekend of sports, and kind of feels like it's not quite Friday, but I don't know. I feel like I have the long weekend blues starting early. I felt it yesterday.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as the long weekend blues.
Yeah, it's leading up before the long weekend.
There's the Sunday scaries when you have to go to work. You could make it, but I mean, what could one possibly be blue about a long weekend? Isn't that the exact opposite of that? Wait, you love the show so much, you're really upset that we're gonna have 3 days without a program, and that's making you sort of down, Reem?
What's it called when you're like the week leading up to the long weekend? When you're just like, I just need the long weekend to be here. Not saying I don't love...
Mail-in Friday. Mail-in Friday often happens with many folks when
not saying I don't love doing this. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, look, sometimes it's just like ready for the long weekend. I don't know.
Well, a big part of it is the fact that it's pretty slow right now. I mean, obviously, we've got a lot of anticipation and excitement for the Bomber game against the Calgary Stampeders on Saturday. But I will say this, after such a juicy offseason for the Winnipeg Jets and a lot of wild stories between the coaching search and obviously everything that's happened with Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah.
Now that PLD spoke on Monday, which certainly was great for the show and got a lot of people talking, now we get to this point where in a lot of ways it's sort of a hurry up and wait. And listen, the waiting, patience, as we mentioned before, maybe not the best virtue of most fans by definition. But I will say this, I kind of understand some impatience from Jet fans this year because of the way the season ended last year, the expectations of so many about some significant changes. And right now we're looking at some significant losses in Paul Stastny, albeit who's still an unrestricted free agent. We'll get to some of the pending UFAs or the remaining UFAs in a minute. Eric Comrie's gone. Big Save Dave is in for him. And a guy like Evgeny Svechnikov, who was still out on the market. So there's still some holes in the lineup, but many of the changes that people thought that had happened haven't. And as I mentioned yesterday on the show, I'm getting more and more skeptical that if some of these deals are going to be able to be made, in particular the one with the captain, Blake Wheeler. And honestly, that just comes down to one simple thing. It's the market right now. And I guess we will find out how serious the Winnipeg Jets are on really making that change over right now, because I think it's obviously not been easy to do. I don't think they've had an appetite on eating the majority of the contract. I certainly don't think that they'll be considering a buyout. And if that's the case, I think there's a good chance right now, at least from where I sit, that, we might be talking a lot about last year at the beginning of this year when many of the same characters are back, albeit under a new head coach in Rick Bonus-Ream.
Yeah, as the time ticks down, I will say we were on such a high since the end of the season with Trotz Watch and, the last couple of days with Pierre-Luc Dubois. And now we're kind of just sitting around waiting for something to happen with this roster because we've talked about it all week. They're going in to this season probably worse than last year on a team that didn't make the playoffs. You're losing Stastny. You haven't replaced Kopp. And here we are saying, oh, this is what we're talking about today, that, they missed out on Danton Heinen, who scored 18 goals. Ken Wiebe reporting yesterday after the show that they made him an offer that was better than the one he accepted in Pittsburgh. He accepted a 1 year, $1 million. And he chose...
That is just insane, by the way, how cheap that deal is.
And he chose to return to his all about returning to the Penguins and trying to chase the Stanley Cup with Crosby and Malkin. So, there are still guys. Evan Rodriguez is one guy the Penguins haven't brought back. And I guess players will have to decide, do you take, a cheap 1 year deal to try and win, or do you want to get paid? Or do you try to wait it out next year and try to get paid more if the cap goes up and more teams have money? And I agree with you. I can't really see any trades coming down unless, something happens in training camp where a player gets injured and team all of a sudden has a ton of cap space and maybe you do something then. But I think it's going to be slow this month. We have the Appleton arbitration on the 11th, and that's about it. That's about it.
There's no way that gets to arbitration.
Well, what can't figure it out to give him like 1.2 million?
Yeah, I'll say this right now. I will be stunned if they actually get to the point. I mean, it shouldn't, and I can't imagine it will be that difficult to find a middle ground between the two. And I think that they really like Mason Appleton. They reacquired him. I don't think that they want to go through that process. I mean, unless they're ridiculously far apart and really do need the arbitrator. But again, there's quite a bit of time. It's one of the last, if not the last arbitration date is the 11th for Mason Appleton. So we'll see on that. But the Heinen was a guy that we've talked about on the program before that I thought would have been a great fit in the middle six for the Winnipeg Jets. The fact that he ended up going back to Pittsburgh on a 1 year deal for $1 million tells you a couple things. One, the squeeze on that middle and lower class in the National Hockey League is very much real. But as Ken reported, the Jets were one of multiple NHL teams to offer Danton Heinen, I believe, significantly more than that 1 year, $1 million deal that he signed. And, for Heinen at where he's at in his career, they're obviously the lure of staying in Pittsburgh and being a part of a team that has Sidney Crosby and is bringing back Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang and really trying to take another run at it. Obviously was attractive enough to leave some significant money on the table. Probably not leaving Johnny Gaudreau $15 million on the table, but the bottom line is this was not a financially motivated decision, and that's unfortunate for teams like the Winnipeg Jets, where often when it comes down to free agent, they're bidding against other teams that may have a leg up on them on location, taxes, all of those things. But if a player wants to play with the legend and stay with the team, it's pretty tough, even if you offer them more money to get them to turn around. And that was the situation with Heinen. So he was one of those three players we talked a lot about, Remo. It was him, Sonny Milano, Evan Rodriguez. Milano and Rodriguez still out there right now. So whether they add to the roster through free agency, a couple more depth pieces, or potentially a bigger trade that, as we've been discussing, seems like they're harder to pull off than they've been in the past, although I saw what Calgary did last week. Going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out, because there are some significant holes right now with the Winnipeg Jets. And I do wonder, haven't heard anything about it, and maybe this is something that next week we'll sort of get into. You wonder if there's been any circling back with Paul Stastny, although, considering that it's pretty much the same guys in the room, and what Stastny had to say at the end of last season, I think it's pretty clear that he was looking at other options before Winnipeg, but at the same time, doesn't have a deal yet, so I imagine anything's on the table.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Jets' top scorers from last year. Here's the list. Stastny, was fifth with 21 goals, and then Kopp chipped in 13 in 56 games. You don't have anyone replacing those guys. And I guess there are still, you could bring in Rodriguez or Milano. I think these guys are taking their time. We did talk about at the end of the show yesterday how John Klingberg fired his agent and went to one of the big guys in Newport Sports Management. Maybe a bunch of guys miscalculated the market, thought they were going to get more, and now they're kind of holding out and waiting and seeing. So it's going to be different for some of those guys available. But I do agree, there are still holes on this roster that need to get filled. So if this team thinks they're going to, improve on last season.
Yeah, and hey, I mean, the guys that whatever the additions for in the roster, if Wheeler's back, if Mark Scheifele's back, Dubois is back, if all those players, I mean, there's not a lot of room in and around the top six. I imagine Cole Perfetti's going to get an opportunity to play there, and hopefully he can sort of fit in, stay healthy, and have a strong full season. But it is that depth part. And the third and fourth line was a bit of a black hole at times for the Jets last year. I mean, I thought Adam Lowry had a monster second half of the season, but it was a revolving door around his wings for the most part on most of the year. And there wasn't a lot of offensive production in the first 50 games or so for he or that line. And the fourth line was insignificant on most nights. And that is something I know the Jets are going to want to change under Rick Bowness, whether he can be the guy that sort of turns that around, empowers those players on those bottom two lines to play a little bit more and have more success. We will see. But they certainly do need another body or two, especially up front. And I guess the other possibility is, you do a salary in, salary out trade involving one of the blue liners that we've talked about, which would also give them room for younger defensemen like Ville Heinola, like Dylan Sandberg, Johnny Kovacevic, who's got another deal. If one of those players is traded, potentially you are, because I mean, right now it is a money in, money out situation for a lot of teams. That could also be an option. But let's take a look at some of the players that are still available right now as unrestricted free agents. And, obviously there's some guys that were making big money last year that don't have deals right now. PK Subban finished up his $9 million cap hit salary. He's the most expensive player. And of course, we heard quite a bit of Phil in the chat last week when it was National Hot Dog Day. We were more debating whether ketchup belongs on hot dogs, but there was quite a few folks that thought it would be time to mention Phil Kessel. Patrice Bergeron, if he's back, is going to be in Boston. Louis Eriksson, I believe, is heading back overseas. You got Anton Strawman, an older defenseman who's finishing up a 5-5 contract. Don't expect him. You have to go down to Nazem Kadri, who by salary last year was the 8th highest paid player on this list. at a very reasonable $4.5 million that had that monster season. He's still waiting to sign a contract. And it is amazing, Reem. I mean, you mentioned Klingberg firing his agent. There were a number of players that got their money when free agency started. The guy that I think we thought would be right at the top of the list, just behind Johnny Gaudreau, and Kadri still doesn't have it. I still believe that they're trying to find a way in Colorado to move out some money and to sign Nazem Kadri. But if that doesn't happen, you wonder what his options are. And it's just quite obvious that not necessarily just because you're coming to unrestricted free agency, you'll be hitting a home run. Because if there was ever anyone that hit a home run in a contract year, it was Nazem Kadri winning the cup, being such a monster player, both regular season and in the playoffs, not having any of the big screw-ups that cost his team in the past. And the fact that he doesn't have a deal right now, I think is one of the big stories of the offseason.
Yeah, I agree with you. John Klingberg firing his agent too now after not having a deal. You know, Paul Stastny also, he had a career. I thought he was going to get paid, but 36 years old. You know, I'm not sure what he's looking for. I think maybe they are waiting for Colorado to shake something out. Are they trying to trade Sam Girard? I'm still surprised. I've mentioned this a couple of times that they just pounced on Josh Manson. They probably felt they didn't have that type of defenseman. But you know, what are we? July 28. We got a month left, I think. Figure some of this stuff out, and I'm looking at some of these players, and there's Sonny Milano. He had 34 points in 66 games last year, 14 goals. That'd be pretty solid on the Jets. I think he would fit in well, but I don't know. He doesn't want to move away from the West Coast to Winnipeg, where it's a bit chillier.
That's a tough one-way ticket, going from Anaheim to Winnipeg, especially if you know you're going to be there all winter, granted. But I think a player like Milano, has to also be looking for what's the best opportunity he can be in, maybe to build off what'll be a 1 or a 2 year deal and then turn that into, some more security and obviously a big pay raise. And I would argue that the Winnipeg Jets, for a player like Milano, would provide that opportunity. Stastny's a very different situation. I mean, at 36 years old, he's probably signing a 1 year deal. But it's hard to get around how important he was for the Jets last year. I mean, you called it 21 goals, 45 points on the season, and such an impactful guy in the locker room as well. And I think that he'll be missed in a number of ways. You do wonder whether there might be a circling back at some point. Zach Aston Reese is another player that, could be some sort of a depth guy. And we've talked about Evan Rodriguez, and, Rodriguez only made $1 million last year. He was on the Danton Heinen contract, but you want to talk about making the most of it, scoring 19 goals and 43 points, just over half a point a game, and playing every single game for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was, benefited from some pretty nice line mates, but did it consistently and is a right shot too. And that's something the Winnipeg Jets have barely any of up front in their forward core. So I certainly would imagine that that's a guy the Winnipeg Jets are sniffing around. But time is ticking, and for each day you don't get one of those guys signed, there's the potential that their name goes off the list, signing with one of the other teams in the NHL.
Yeah, Zach Aston Reese was named in a Kevin Weeks tweet earlier today. Keep an eye on series.
Keep an eye on series. Love it.
Keep an eye on. He was skating at the Devils practice facility. He's checked in. Nothing on that currently. Situation remains fluid. So we are keeping an eye on who's left for free agency here. But I kind of agree that you really saw when they were trying to make a power play, the Jets are trying to put units together. Having 2 right shots of the 9 and was a problem. And before the start of the season, people came in our chat and were like, they don't have any right shots. I'm like, it's fine. They'll figure it out. You have good players. They're projected to make the playoffs. Not a big deal. But when you're trying to put together, power plays and you need one-timers and set up passing, you only have 2 right shots. I think it caused problems for them when creating some of their units.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it was a challenge, I think, for for the coaching staff to try to find some different ways of setting things up. And obviously, I mean, at times the power play was fine last year. At times, though, it did look a little bit lost, much like the team did overall. But all of those things are going to be up for review and probably significantly changed one way or the other by Rick Bowness and his staff that he's put together over the course of this offseason. But beyond those players, there's not very many other guys that are really eye-catching that would be anything other than league minimum guys. Although I know there's a few folks in chat, including our friend Bridget that came out to Assiniboia Downs with the WST crew a few weeks ago, that have our old pal Matthew Perreault circled on it. And Perreault, I think, can still play in a depth role in a fourth line. I mean, he certainly would be playing for his career. Only got in 25 games last year, had 4 goals, 5 assists for 9 points. Maybe he gets another chance, but I think that's a level of player sort of below what the Jets would be interested in right now, because they do have some money to spend and they certainly do have some holes. Best case scenario would be somehow convince Paul Stastny to come back, in my opinion. But I think Evan Rodriguez, being a bit of a younger player at 28 years old, coming off the season that he had, would be a guy that would have some interest as well. Bottom line is, for everyone that had their heart set on potentially getting Danton Heinen here to Winnipeg, that's not happening, as he turned down significantly more money from a number of NHL teams, according to Ken Wiebe, to stay with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And hey, if it's not all about money, that's a pretty damn good place to be playing your NHL career.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to play with Crosby and try to chase a cup? So here we are, August, Rodriguez watch. We're waiting. We'll be searching the rumor mill every day. So we'll have to wait and see.
Scratching the bottom of the barrel for cranking out a Rodriguez watch on Winnipeg Sports Talk right now.
They need scoring. They need some depth scoring. As you said, you didn't get anything from the bottom 6 last year, barely. And you just lost Stastny and Kopp. Who's replacing them? I guess Perfetti. You can maybe pencil him in for what? Yeah, 40, 45 points. We'll have to wait and see here.
There was a couple of signings yesterday by the Jets. Well, actually more by the Manitoba Moose. Colin Billick, who's 25, a former from Army, who had 31 points in 34 games. He was the captain of the team and was named to the East Second All-Star All-American team and AHA First All-Star team in both 20 and 21. And the Moose also signed Joseph Nardi from Northern Michigan University, who had 14 points in 21 games. He was part of the WCHA second All-Star team and earned all academic team honors in 2021. And he also was the team captain in the final 2 seasons with the program. So sounds like they're getting some players with some potential, obviously older players that are going to come in and try and cut their teeth in the American Hockey League. These guys do have some leadership qualities, obviously, as being captains for the last couple years. But I don't think, Greenwood, that either of these individuals will project to make any sort of an impact at the National Hockey League level this year, although we have seen before players come in on this sort of an arrangement. Brandon Tanev was a perfect example of a guy that, came out of college, got an opportunity in some games and never looked back. So, but we just wanted to mention those more depth signings for the American Hockey League, still leaving some significant holes up with the big club. We'll talk about this more with Rewucki, get his thoughts on what the Jets may or may not be doing, and what the best course of action going forward, and of course his thoughts on the plan of action to handle the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation coming into the season and into next year after everything that we heard from Monday from the Winnipeg Jets center. Hey, Reem, before we get to Keegan Matheson and some Blue Jays talk, did you notice that the Live Golf Invitational at Bedminster had their Pro-Am today? They've only played the 54 holes, so you can have the Thursday to hang out with some of the corporate sponsors. And what a group of amateurs in with the Pro-Ams, including the first tee time off, Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau, and Donald Trump and his son, Eric.
Yeah, there was this is quite the group. I wasn't sure, I bet on Liv yesterday because Feinberg gave us that Bryson play. And then I didn't know if it started Friday to Sunday or Thursday to Saturday because it's only the 3-day tournament. But you were telling me about the Pro-Am here. It's quite a group of individuals.
This is wild. And Bryson, I think, is a big Trump guy. He used to have a Trump thing on his bag. So he'll be, I'm sure, all excited and fired up about this. Couple of other interesting individuals that are in. The full send guy, Kyle Forgard's there playing with Henrik Stenson and Martin Kamer. Stenson, by the way, has been replaced by Luke Donald as the Ryder Cup captain after losing that opportunity when he defected to Live. And Paul Casey and Ian Poulter playing with Haley Ostrom, who I think was on one of the big breaks, and Caitlin Jenner. And then Clay Travis is teeing it up with Brooks Koepka and Pat Perez. But probably the most eyes will be on outside of that first group that I mentioned for obvious reasons. Charles Barkley playing with Sergio Garcia and Louis Oosthuizen. And today is the day, Reem. Charles said that when he leaves the tournament on Thursday, he better have his offer and he'll let them know. He's basically floated it out that he's making $20 million, and if the Live people will triple it to 60, he's probably in. And that will be one of the biggest sports media stories. And for all the golf people that are pissed off with Live and what it's done to the world of golf, just wait till they take Charles Barkley from the NBA pregame show on TNT and see what the blowback from that's going to be.
Yeah, and I was listening to the Marchand and Orand sports media podcast last night, and that's a big story for them. Charles Barkley. Barkley said on Dan Patrick he's making about $20 million a year right now. That's 10 from Turner on TNT and 10 from endorsements. And he knows that he'll probably lose endorsements if he goes to Live. But I mean, so he said he would go for $60 million. I do think, or they did say on the podcast, that Turner will probably up Charles Barkley's pay because we've seen what Troy Aikman and Joe Buck are getting from ESPN this year. The salaries on the big networks for these primetime sports have been like over.
Well, and what about Brady's contract?
Yeah.
Isn't Brady getting $37.5 million a year? And that's just whenever he decides to finish playing and he rolls into the booth. I mean, making twice as much. I mean, it's a good time to be Charles Barkley. It's a great time to be Tony Romo, Aikman, all of the big, key, impactful commentators that bring in eyeballs. And there's few of them, but those guys are incredibly in demand. And I just would have never thought that Barkley was one of the worst golfers on the planet, and a basketball guy would be potentially joining David Faraday in this outlaw league. Interesting to see some of the comments in the chat on Live. Loaf of Bread, Stenson, the ultimate sellout. Yeah. I mean, Stenson sucks now. I mean, they're not getting him because they think he's going to be a great draw or be like a great golfer. I mean, they did it essentially to disrupt the Ryder Cup, to basically to get a head of a Ryder Cup captain, and obviously everything that goes with that. So it is unfortunate. B. Henderson, Live better than PGA. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, it looks like a glorified member guest, to be honest, when you're watching them play. And they do have some incredible players. I mean, DJ is there. We heard Bubba is leaving for reportedly $50 million. I mean, go get it, Bubba. Probably. I mean, for the most part, these guys that have jumped at the money, like Phil, everyone basically other than Bryson, DJ, Abe Answer, and a few others are sort of well into the back nine of their career, and frankly aren't that competitive playing against the best in the world on the PGA Tour, but they're going to be making some big bank on the Live Tour, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more tomorrow when the event gets going. My guy Tony Finau, 8 under par at the event in Detroit this week, and Canadian Taylor Pendrith, the Coolbet guy, he's at 7 under par. We'll get to a little update on that. All right, we are going to talk some Blue Jays right away. Lost last night, but it's been a great start under John Schneider. Things have really turned around. But before we do that, a big shout out to our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market, who have great prices on Winnipeg's best selection of natural organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries. Get your barbecue on with delicious lean bison steaks or chicken, hot dogs, burgers, non-alcoholic drink options like Sober Carpenter beer, and clever mocktails as well. And hey, if you can't make it down to one of the stores, visit their new fully shoppable website to buy online, schedule a delivery, or in-store pickup. And of course, you like supporting local, and Vita Health is a great local company carrying an amazing selection of local products too. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. Great summer sale happening down at F Apparel. You need to get that wardrobe ready to go for fall. when everything sort of gets back to business after the Labor Day long weekend, F Apparel is the spot. Great sale right now. 3 custom shirts for just $210. I can tell you, I was in last week getting fitted by Andrew and the gang. Just an amazing selection. Any kind, any style, fabric, pattern, they've got it. And when it comes to custom suits, they are the leader in Winnipeg. Custom suits starting at $400, and they are sweet. Check them out online. F Apparel. That's EPHapparel.com. Pop down and see them at 190 Smith Street. And fellas, if you're in a wedding party or planning one, make sure to talk to them about a great group discount, 15% off when you and the fellas get the suits from F Apparel. Wallace and Wallace, busy right now. Of course, they're the fencing leaders in town, overhead door specialist, but they also got you covered for the boathouse. I mean, if you're ripping around on the lake on the long weekend and the boathouse door catches your eye, chances are it's one of theirs. You can choose between a steel or aluminum door, polycarbonate or glass panels, and a design that's perfect for your little piece of paradise. And with galvanized tracks and springs to protect against rust, you know their doors are built to stand up of challenges of life at the lake. And hey, if you do think your boathouse door could use some TLC now that the high water's receded, you can give them a call to arrange a service visit at 204-452-2700. Hit them up online at wallacedoors.com or check out their showroom over on Lawson Road. And my countdown is on to Aikens Lake. I was checking out the Twitter feed yesterday at Aikens and some more monster master anglers coming out there, some more Century clubs. I'm hoping that I can come back with some great stories of victory on the lake. But to be perfectly honest, catching a big one or not, the trip to Aikens Lake, the highlight of my year every single year. And we cannot wait to get out there. If you're thinking about a one-of-a-kind fly-in fishing experience here in Manitoba, where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens Lake is the spot. Find out more on all their social channels at Aikens Lake and check them out online at aikenslake.com. All right, we'll get back to some hockey talk and maybe a little NFL offseason as well with Rewucki. Patty Neufeld's going to join us to get ready for Bomber Stamps on Saturday night. But right now, it's been a minute since we've talked Blue Jays, and it's great to welcome Keegan Matheson in for the latest on Canada's Major League team. Keegan, what's going on? How's the summer been?
Hey, it's going very well. The Blue Jays are picking it up again lately. Everybody's back and tuned in. You know, kind of my life gets a little busier when the NHL playoffs end too. So everyone's paying attention again to the Blue Jays. It's been a good run.
Well, and lots of reasons to pay attention right now. A great run as of late. I mean, you know, before we get to looking ahead, I mean, overall, how would you categorize this season? Because it has seemed to be somewhat, I mean, good so far. They've got a nice record, but it really has been a lot of ups and downs without a ton of consistency overall.
Yeah, which is an interesting way to go through this. Interesting. This was supposed to be a team with a great rotation, a fantastic lineup. And at times, neither have been true. At times, you know, one has had to carry the other. And it reminds me, again, next year in spring training, I need to give up previewing seasons. It's been a lesson that, you know, no matter what you think will happen, no matter how certain it looks, it's not going to happen that way. So I think the Blue Jays have been disappointing at times. They've underachieved at times. But where they are now is still a very good team. It's one of the best records in the American League. They are firmly in a playoff spot, and opening up, I think, those 3 wildcard spots changes how we and how I look at all of this. You know, when you are looking at a recent skid like the Blue Jays had before the break, back in the 1 wildcard or even 2 wildcard setup, that's pretty ugly. But now that you have 3 wildcards, you can skid for a month and still pull it out of the ditch in time to reach the postseason. So they're doing that right now, and currently they're playing their best baseball of the season.
Well, and of course, that's coincided with the Schneider, the new manager, taking over. But before we get to the new manager, I quickly wanted to ask you about the old one. What ended up being the undoing for Charlie?
Yeah, it's always going to be the manager who takes the fall when there's a bad run. And that's not just baseball, it goes in any sports. And the Blue Jays were on that ugly run. I think a 1-9 skid they were on, 1-6 on a road trip over the West Coast. And this is a classic scenario that gets a manager fired, which is a very good roster that's not doing it right now. And it's difficult to quantify a managerial change. Just like it's the same thing I say every year when I'm voting for manager of the year. I don't know how to measure a manager. And I think it's important to say that when there's a firing or a hiring as well. There's not a metric we can measure them by. Even when we're looking in-game at reliever choices, hit and run choices, pinch hitters, so much of that is coming from other coaches, from the front office. It's so very collaborative now. So the change was made to shake things up and to wake up the clubhouse, frankly. Now, ideally, that's not something you need to do in the middle of a professional sports season in any sport, but it's worked. Having a different voice, and John Schneider is a different voice. He's a different energy, a different style of management. It has been working so far. You're really seeing it immediately.
You know what I found interesting is after the firing, I mean, a few players, including Bo Bichette, sort of publicly said that, yeah, it was time. And, Charlie seemed to be pretty popular with the players before. I mean, those aren't comments you often hear from big leaguers, even if they totally feel that way after a guy gets a pink slip.
That's right. Yeah, I think that this team and these young players are used to winning, and especially for young guys. Now, if you are a player who's been around the league for 10 years, chances are you've played for a bad team that sucked. Not sucked in a rebuilding way where better years are coming, but chances are you've been on a team that was just plain bad with no hope next year either. So veteran players might be able to look at that differently, but for young players who have won, not just in pro ball, but coming up to the minor leagues, going back to high school, college, they were probably the best player on the best team in their town. You're used to winning. So when that's not happening, or when your team is underachieving for one of the first times in your life, you do look for a change. You look for why. It's not the energy, it's not the experience that you're used to. So that's why you did hear that from some of the players, I believe, with Bo having that comment where he said that he didn't disagree with it. It's I think across the board, Charlie had the respect of those players. He came up with them, developed them through 19, 20, 21, and what he did managing a team on the road, I think deserves a hell of a lot of respect. Because he was put in a position to manage people as much as ball players, because these are young kids, 22, 24, 26, who are trying to move their families around the U.S., Buffalo, Dunedin, wherever they were playing. And Montoya was put in charge of managing, that more human side of it as well. So his stint as manager with the Blue Jays, I believe he ended with an even 500 record, but it was by far the most unique managerial stint and challenge probably of any manager we've seen the Blue Jays have.
Of course, they passed the torch at least temporarily on an interim basis, although it looks good with the start to John Schneider. I mean, hey, we all know this is a results-based business. The results have been very good for the Blue Jays since the changeover. How impactful has he been? And I mean, you're around the club. What's he like, and how different is it under Schneider than it was under Charlie?
Yeah, you're seeing a team that's a lot more aggressive now, frankly, on the base. And that Blue Jays want to be more aggressive. They want to be stealing bases, stretching singles into doubles, doing a hit and run. And that's the way it should be, frankly. This team on paper is better than the team they're going to be playing almost every night. Now, that doesn't matter for much. Of course, the worst team in baseball can come sweep the Blue Jays easily. It happens. But when you are the better team, you need to be the aggressor. You need to be controlling the pace of play. And I know that applies more in the NBA or the NHL where there's constant movement. You're not moving in segments like you are in baseball, but you can still control that as a baseball team. We're seeing more of that from the Blue Jays under Schneider, and that energy matches. Schneider is 42, I believe, came up in this organization, was drafted almost 20 years ago, and has always been headed for this spot. He is a guy with a lot of respect around the league. I think if the Blue Jays had not named him the interim manager, he would have gotten interest elsewhere this offseason. Interim, I think, is just a temporary word. I see him here long-term. I see him being the face of this long-term very easily, actually. And I think the players have reacted well, immediately taking that energy. And it's the word you hear over and over, energy. Whether it be from George Springer, Ross Stripling, some younger guys in this team, players who have played for multiple managers are really buying in immediately, which is good to see.
It certainly is. I mean, and there's so much young energy in this group, although they've got some more experience right now. And I think that, has maybe helped them weather what happened earlier in the season. And obviously now still with the Herculean task of chasing down the New York Yankees with that crazy record at the top of the division. Things are going well. When you look at the batting lineup right now, I mean, I'm a huge Alejandro Kirk guy. It was so cool to see him go to the All-Star game. Such a unique player. But the key players are Vladdy, Bo Bichette, George Springer. Overall, how would you assess the performance of the stars right now in the Blue Jays up until this point in the season?
Getting better, but the Blue Jays need a little more. I think George Springer has been maybe an underrated story for the Blue Jays this year. You're seeing what he can be when he's healthy, which we didn't see much of last year. And this is such a talented player across the board, too. His speed, his defense, you've seen more this year. George Springer is such a talented player. And there's a reason he got 6 years, $150 million. They don't give that to anybody. But I think it's taken Blue Jays fans a little to see what that looks like night in and night out. And having him as your leadoff man is ridiculous. That's an incredible advantage for the Blue Jays. I think Springer's been great this year. Now, Vladdy, it's taken a little time. He's looked a lot better lately, though, and hitting some ground balls again, which was his problem a couple of years ago. But when Vladdy's lifting the ball in the air, everything he hits is hard. And his defense has improved, so I think you're going to see that come along. He looks better in that number 2 hole. I like him in that number 2 hole. Springer, Vladdy, and Kirk, I think is a perfect top 3. I think that makes a ton of sense. Bo Bichette is the guy they need to get going, frankly, at this point. He hit 298 last year, I believe. Almost stole 30 bases, too. He was almost a 30-30 guy, but he hasn't really gotten rolling. And I think you are going to see that soon, but some pitchers have really targeted his aggression at the plate. And I remember down in spring training, Bo looked amazing. Like, he looked like he was due for a legitimate breakout superstar year, not just all-star, but a superstar season down in spring training. So that's in there. Everybody knows how good he is. His defense has been less of a conversation this year, which is good. That shows some progress. But his bat, when he gets going and he's jumping on opposing pitchers, is pretty special. Really needs to take some strides there. Again, the strikeouts have been an issue. Not hitting for average, not reaching base enough. But I think that number 4 hole will be a little more natural for him. And when Bo gets going, he's kind of the last one in line to really get going. We've seen it from Gurriel, Hernandez, Matt Chapman looks better now. When Bichette gets going, that's when this lineup just gets ridiculous.
Yeah, and you mentioned Matt Chapman. I mean, he was a big offseason acquisition. And, part of the narrative of bringing Chapman in was that he was so good defensively. That may have an effect on Bo Bichette, making him a better overall and more efficient defensive player. How is Chapman added to the mix right now? And do people get sort of maybe, are they thrown off the scent by seeing a 241 average with the power that he hits for and how often he gets on base as opposed to guys that might be batting with the 20% better batting average?
Yeah, the average does kind of skew that a bit. And that's something John Schneider said a few times, that it's a very quiet performance from him this year, but he's been good. And he is coming around now. And Chapman said prior to the All-Star break, so this was a couple of weeks ago, that he kind of took a look at his own game. There was one day where his average was down 219, 220, and he said, this is not who I am. It's time to make some changes in season. And that requires a bit of sacrifice, not just in terms of work and hours put in, and it's a long season. These guys are at the ballpark more than enough. But it's about being willing to step back and maybe have an ugly week, maybe struggle for a week, but with the fact in mind, you will improve down the stretch. Because it's hard enough to make an adjustment. Doing it in the middle of the season against Major League pitching is nearly impossible. So Chapman looked at himself, said it wasn't good enough, and decided to change. And you're seeing the results now, because this is a guy back in 2019 who was one of the best hitters in baseball as well. Not just one of the best defenders, but a great hitter. Really a star all the way around. So you're seeing him turn that corner a bit. I think it's also working against him a little bit that he was brought in as sort of kind of the Marcus Semien replacement in that lineup. He was the star name brought in to fill that Semien role, even though they're different positions. But defensively has been just as advertised. Pitchers love him. Every pitcher probably has an ERA a couple of points lower because of Chapman, and I think that you're going to see a better bat down the stretch.
Keegan Matheson with us from MLB.com talking Blue Jays. You mentioned stars, and there's no bigger star on the bump than Alek Manoah. What a player he's turned into be. And in some ways, a revelation. I mean, I'm sure they had high hopes for him, but to be this good this early in his career, it's a real luxury for a team that's lost Hyunjin Ryu. Kikuchi's struggled and been on the DL, but it's allowed Barrios and Gosman and even Ross Stripling to sort of be consistent in the middle of the rotation, knowing that they've got that horse they can throw it every fifth day.
Yeah, he is somehow still underrated. Alek Manoah is an amazing starting pitcher. Really one of the best in Major League Baseball, period, right now. He does a couple of things that impress me, but in much different ways. Now, number one, he gets guys out. He has the big fastball, has the big slider. That's great. So do 100 other people in Major League Baseball. It's like when we talk about a guy who comes up throwing 100. Frankly, I don't care anymore. Everybody can throw 98, 99. Every team has someone who throws 100. It's really cool for a week or two, but baseball is full of people who come up and flash a little bit of talent and then start getting hit when opposing lineups have a second or two to adjust to them. What's amazing about Manoah is the consistency that every single day when he's starting, I can write my story in the first inning. He's going to throw 7 innings. There's going to be 1 earned run allowed, maybe 2, 7 strikeouts, maybe 6, maybe 8. But it doesn't change much. It's the same story over and over. And to be able to do that while other lineups are adjusting to you and while other lineups know you are a star is extremely rare. That's extremely rare. And that's what impresses me the most. And I always think it's important to point out when we're wrong as well. I mean, at the start of spring training last year, I would have told you maybe late 2021, so maybe by the end of late last season, he comes up as a reliever and eventually develops into a starter. He was up a couple of weeks into the season, was one of the best rookies in baseball, and now he is one of the best pitchers in baseball. He will be getting Cy Young votes this season, not just for being good, but for being consistent. And on top of all of that, I don't know if there's a player on this roster that fits Toronto better right now, because he has that swagger that you can only pull off if you're really good. If you're going to beat your chest and jaw with the other team, you better win, and he usually does. So the entire package is just must-see TV. He is a great player and, frankly, good for baseball. You know, he is worth turning on your TV for, which is something that baseball needs more of. Because even if Manoah has a boring start, even if it's 5 innings, allows 2 or 3 runs, chances are he is going to get into it with somebody. And you're going to forget what he did. It's so entertaining.
Yeah, there's certainly no dull moments with Manoah on the mound. How comfortable is Blue Jays management in the bullpen right now?
You need some additions there. I think the bullpen across baseball now is something that teams can almost go into the season knowing they're going to change. You're going to go through 20 relievers anyways. That's how it works now. You just hope that you find a couple of guys who get hot for a month. You know, that just deals like that Sergio Romo deal, which didn't work out, didn't last, but really you're just trying to find some guys to get through. But at the deadline, the Blue Jays do need to address that bullpen, because looking at the back end group, Jordan Romano, fantastic. Then you have another group with Phelps, Jimmy Garcia, Tim Meza. That's a good group that you can have towards that back end. But you would love to add a couple of more guys to bump them maybe into the middle innings. And that's when this bullpen gets stronger. Because a contender, a legitimate contender for a World Series, has more than one Jordan Romano. They have 2 closers. They have 3 closers. And the Blue Jays do need to add some swing and miss as well, because take Adam Simber, for example. Fantastic reliever, great trade, very valuable. I really like Adam Simber as a pitcher. But if the Blue Jays are in a spot where it's a 1-1 game, there's a runner on third base with 1 out, so a ball in play will score that reliever, Simber's not a swing and miss guy. Even when you look down the line at a Meza or a Jimmy Garcia, they can get strikeouts, but you want a guy who really gets strikeouts that you can put in and bet that you've got a 50% chance you're going to get a strikeout from this guy. So I think that's something the Blue Jays need to target. They do have some internal options as well, but it's time to hit that trademark, and I think that needs to be a real top priority.
Well, it's a perfect segue just before we finish up to talk about the trade deadline. I heard Ross Atkins speaking yesterday about the market right now and said the teams are really looking at premium prices right now in advance of the deadline, and he feels like there'll be better value at the deadline. But what do you make of their goals right now? Are they big game hunting? We've heard some big names in play, or is this more filling out the periphery of the roster for more depth going into the stretch and hopefully a nice playoff run?
I think it depends a bit on the position. Now, when you look at the rotation, I can see them doing something similar to 2020. And that is when they went out and they got Ross Stripling, they got Robbie Ray before he turned into Robbie Ray, and Taiwan Walker. Guys to kind of fill out that 4 and 5 spot in the rotation. If they can do that, that's good enough for the rotation. Figure out what to do with Yusei Kikuchi, but shore up the rotation so that you're safe. That's enough. I don't think that there's much of an upgrade to be made to this lineup unless you make a big swing, a blockbuster swing. You adjust the bench. I think you can add some balance, maybe some speed to that bench. But the bullpen, I think, is where you might take a couple of bigger swings. And really across the board, though, the Blue Jays, and this applies to the offseason, this applies to next trade deadline, they need to be aggressive. They have to be aggressive because this is the sweet spot for an organization. You see around baseball teams that get stuck in the middle, who try to rebuild, but they get stuck at 75, 77, 80 wins. And that can happen to you for a long time. Think about the Blue Jays from 1995 to 2015. I know there were fewer wildcard spots, but you can get stuck. The Blue Jays are in that spot right now where their young core is matched up with expensive free agents and they have money to spend. This is where teams dream of getting. But the hard spot is getting from here to the next step, that final 10% of a rebuild, getting into the real competitive phase. And this is where you're aggressive because this is rare. This does not happen a lot, where you have Vladdy and Bo and Kirk and Manoah, who are not just great, but more importantly, they are cheap right now. They are not making 25, 30 million a year. You need to strike at this point. It's like in the NFL where you have a quarterback on a rookie deal. That is when you spend. So I think the Blue Jays recognize that. This is the point that you get to that does not last forever. You'd love it to last forever, but sustainable winning is a myth. It's a unicorn. It's the Loch Ness Monster. It doesn't last in pro sports. So when you get there like this and you have 2-3 years, go nuts. Go all in.
Keegan, this was awesome as always. Always love catching up, and it's an exciting time for Jays fans. Sort of the dog days of summer right now. All eyes on the Blue Jays, and they've been winning lots lately, and all eyes on the trade deadline, and of course, hopefully on a nice push into the playoffs. Thanks so much for doing this, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
You got it. Anytime at all. Thank you.
All right, great stuff with Keegan. Jays open a series tonight against the Detroit Tigers, and just seeing on the feed, also announced a $300 million renovation to the Rogers Center with some new lounges and some alternate areas, moving out some seats and giving people a few more options as to where they spend their day at the ball game, which looks pretty cool. All right, Rewucki's on deck. Before we do that, hydration break with our friends at Culligan Water, the locally owned family business that has been hydrating Winnipeggers and Southern Manitobans for over 65 years. They've got everything you need: water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems and drinking water systems, not to mention citywide water delivery services and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Whether it's for the home, the cottage, or the office, Culligan's got you covered. Visit them at 1200 Sargent Avenue, 694-5180, or online at drinkculligan.com. Long weekend coming up. You have the batteries for everything you need. Of course, Manitoba Battery is the home of the $99 deep cycle battery. You won't find anyone in town that can compete with that price, whether it's for your camper, your boat, or anything else. You'll get the best price and the best service from the guys and gals down at Manitoba Battery. And hey, they'll deliver it to you. You save money with the best prices in town, better than Costco and Canadian Tire, the big box stores, and they'll certainly save you a lot of time dealing with those parking lots and staff that are not trained specifically in battery products. And of course, Manitoba Battery will also deliver the battery to you citywide at no extra cost when you live inside the perimeter. enjoy the great prices and the convenience of Manitoba Battery, manitobabattery.com, or go visit the team in the coolest JetBlue building in Winnipeg at 1026 Logan Avenue, open 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. I'll peel the curtain back, folks. Remo and I working with Greg and the guys at Royal on some new WST lids. A couple of new versions going to be coming out at some point. And obviously, we talked to Royal Sports when we're thinking about merchandise because they are the merch headquarters for every type of fan. Jets, National Hockey League, Bombers in the CFL, NFL with the season just around the corner, Major League Baseball, Blue Jays, NBA, international soccer, whatever you're looking for, chances are Royal has it. And in addition to all the great merchandise, the massive hockey section, bikes, soccer, softball, baseball right now, tennis, disc golf, and more. Make the most of summer and do it by starting with a trip down to Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, and follow them on Instagram for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And I did mention, we're a couple weeks away from the Canadian Mid-Am and Senior Women's here in Winnipeg at Breezy Bend. It's going to be an incredible event. And of course, very much looking forward to hosting the country. We'll be getting out there beforehand to, and hopefully get out there and do a show from Breezy in and around it. Can't tell you though, the Rocket Mortgage Classic is on. We talked about the Live Pro-Am already. The real thing's happening on the PGA Tour. Tony Finau, my guy, 8 under par. And Canadian Taylor Pendrith, Coolbet guy, he's at 8 under par as well. What a round for the Canadian. Of course, Breezy Bend sponsors all of our golf reports. And if you're thinking about a great spot for your family long-term at Winnipeg's top private clubs, Breezy Bend is the spot. Give Corey Johnson a call, our great friend, the GM, and ask about getting on the waiting list for next year, or find out more online at everything Breezy has to offer at breezybend.ca. All right, Bomber talk with Patty Neufeld of the Blue and Gold later on, but let's get Rewucki in for his weekly visit on WST. What's going on, man? Great to have you back on the program.
Pumped to be back, my man. I'm doing good. What's new with you?
Well, what's new is that for the first little while, it's sort of quiet on the Jets scene. I mean, last week was all about Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I guess we'll have to get your thoughts on Dubois from Monday. But once kind of he said what he had to say, we've talked about it for a couple of days now, sort of hurrying up and waiting for some other shoes to fall, for some moves to happen, and for some spots to be filled on this roster. Listen, before we get to that, other things in the league, what did you think of Pierre-Luc Dubois' media availability on Monday?
Yeah, I don't know. There wasn't really a whole lot that was surprising that came out of it. I don't know if anything stood out to you really, but for me, it was just kind of what you expected, like downplay a little bit of what was said from his agent, but at the same time, he's not going to come out and say, yeah, 6-7 years in Winnipeg, that's on the table for me right away. I think he's a really well-spoken and thoughtful young man. Like he takes his time to answer questions, and it's not just the usual BS that's been hammered into these kids since they were, 16 years old. And he makes valid points. And it's kind of what I said on your show going back, a long time now, is that, he probably doesn't really know what he wants to do in 2 years anyways. Like
he doesn't know what he's having for dinner tonight.
Yeah, right? And who knows what's going to happen at the end of this year? Who knows what's going to happen at training? Like there's just so many unknown factors. If anything, it maybe speaks a little bit to the dysfunction that the Winnipeg Jets find themselves in, because maybe make the case that if they were in a better spot, that, hey, you know what? First line minutes, chance to be a part of the leadership group. Would you like to play with Kyle Connor for the next 7 years on top of that and hit 80 points and make $8-9 million? Like maybe then it might be an easier sell to have a guy like that in the fold long term. But yeah, all in all, I didn't really take a whole lot from it, because it's kind of what I think we had anticipated going into it once he signed the 1 year, $6 million deal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how successful. I mean, obviously this was a PR, an attempt at some good PR for a guy that had been getting killed in the media here and really around, and not necessarily him, but more his agent and how they had sort of handled things, being unusually public about a potential destination that's 2 years away as per, when he can actually go where he wants. And I thought that it was an attempt to sort of say, hey, you know, this has all been overblown. I don't know how successful that was, to be honest with you. We certainly saw in the chat that I don't think a lot of people were buying that this was somewhat fabricated by the media. And certainly the folks at The Athletic do a great job. Hamilton was on. I mean, they believe those reports. All that being said, though, I'm sort of with you. And I don't think this was a great time coming off this season that the Jets just had to feel like everyone was about to, you know, throw down and say, hey, we're all in long term. I mean, they haven't even had one practice under Rick Bowness. I will say this. I don't know why it would have been so hard, whether it was BS or not, just to say, you know what, I'm playing this year out. We'll see what happens. And at the end, anything is possible, which I guess he sort of did. But people tried so hard to say, will you consider signing long-term in Winnipeg, and never quite got close to saying absolutely yes. And I mean, again, it doesn't mean that you're going to do it, just that it's a possibility. And if it doesn't seem like it's much of a possibility, that puts a lot on the shoulders of the GM, realizing, okay, how is this going to work with our club? And when do we move this asset to hopefully not disrupt too much of what's going on with the club in the present? But you can't end up losing a guy like that for pennies on the dollar, especially when you think about what you gave up to get him. And oh, by the way, Laine and Rosovic both signed in Columbus. Laine for 4 years.
Yeah, you know, it was a bit of a masterclass in semantics, wasn't it? Where I didn't
Yes.
I didn't demand a trade out of Winnipeg. I never said that, but I did say I would like to go to Montreal and I'm not signing. You know what I mean? Like I didn't say this specific thing, even though the ultimate goal of what I want is exactly similar to that, and so on and so on. And that's even with the long-term thing. Like, hey, after this year, let's talk about it. But it's not really a firm step in the positive direction that Jets fans might have wanted to hear. But again, like I don't really blame Pierre-Luc Dubois in that, right? Like, he wasn't drafted by Winnipeg. He was, you know, not forced to come here, right? But moved from Columbus to a different destination. And it's not like the Jets have given him a ton of reasons to sign for the prime of his career and spend the next 7-8 years. I mean, never mind just the dysfunction that's going on with the team, but are the Jets going to win? Like, are they going to be a contender? Do they have a legitimate plan going forward? That's something that to me is kind of been the scary revelation of this entire offseason is what the hell is the plan here in Winnipeg going into this season, let alone 2 years from now. So it's just why it kind of all leads me back to the point of, you know what, it wasn't a disaster and it wasn't a massive home run, that press conference from Dubois for Jets fans. It was just kind of, I guess we're putting this 6 months down the road and we'll figure things out a little bit later on.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I did appreciate was the fact that, you know, he signed the qualifying offer. He said he's very excited, had great conversations with Rick Bowness. I mean, I think the one thing everyone can agree on, that regardless of how this thing plays out in a year or 2 years, it is in everybody's best interest to have him engaged with a good opportunity and play well and produce. It's good for him in the long run when he signs his long-term deal, wherever it may be. And obviously for the Winnipeg Jets, with a player like this for 2 years of team control, you know, with the value for him, the better he plays, the more that might fetch on the trade market. So certainly in that case, I think they did a good job of sort of letting people know where things stand right now and that he is all in. I'm still fascinated, though, Brandon, as to how he will be greeted by Winnipeg fans this year after everything that's happened in the offseason, knowing that the smart money is on him departing as soon as Kevin Cheveldayoff gets the deal that makes sense for the Jets.
I mean, if he has Bufflin like first shift, then maybe it's going to be a positive reaction pretty quickly. Like that, a lot of how he plays is going to determine the reaction, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, initially when he first steps on the ice, I think maybe a smattering of booze or something like that, but I don't think it's going to be anything overwhelming. But basically the first 10 games of the season are going to determine how Jets fans react towards Dubois for the rest of the year. It's that simple, and I don't really have a problem with that, you know, whatsoever, and that's on him now. And that's the other part too, like, you know, prolonging this into a holdout or him not showing up at camp and all, like nobody wins in that situation. So while it's not the perfect way that any of us envisioned this playing out, like he's going to be suiting up. To me, there's no way he gives anything less than 100%. And hey, maybe Rick Bowness likes what he sees out of him in camp and he becomes this team's number one center right out of the gate. And we see where things go from there. But I can't imagine that, as positive as Jets fans want to be right now, if he's got 2 points in his first 10 games, that this doesn't devolve into something that's a complete nightmare, right?
Yeah, it certainly becomes a bigger story. And, and part of it, I mean, as I said, this is entirely self-inflicted. I mean, the way it was handled, particularly by the agent, I mean, it did put a far bigger spotlight on Dubois. And when you think about the way things ended in Columbus, it's natural that people will question, well, if he's already got 1 foot out the door and he's thinking somewhere else, how committed is he going to be? We saw none of that last year, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that will be the case, but I do understand how that part of the story still exists when we've seen all of it. All that being said, Dubois sounds like he's back. Apparently Scheifele as well. And with every day going forward, Brandon, I think with what we've learned about the market, it is less and less and less likely that the Jets are going to be able to trade Blake Wheeler, which is going to be a fascinating scenario for Rick Bowness when he takes over as the head coach come training camp time.
Yeah, run it all back, right? You finished 10th last year in the West. Why not bring the same crew back? There was a mutiny as well, by the way, but that's not a big issue, right? You talking about positive or negative reaction and reception. I think Jets fans have every right to boo Kevin Cheveldayoff's name game 1 of the season if they announce him in the home opener, because this has been a disastrous offseason. I don't know if you could put it any other way, man. Like on my show on Tuesday, you could maybe make a debate about this, but I truly believe that what we're in the midst of right now is the worst offseason in Jets 2.0 history, because nothing's being done. And like I said earlier, what's the plan? Like, does anybody really know what direction the Jets want to go in right now? Like, they've been kind of intimating that we want to be competitive and win now this season, well, which is fine, but you have to make a move. Like, you have to add people into the organization if you want to be much more competitive, considering the level of talent we've seen from some of the teams ahead of them in the Western Conference, never mind the Eastern Conference right now. All they've done so far is downgrade at backup goalie and lose Paul Stastny. Like, this is a worse team than last year, and last year's team stunk. And yet we're still not seeing anything.
That being said, no one hands out the cup at the end of July. I mean, and I get the impatience. But I think what we're seeing right now, and it's very clear, Brandon, is that this market and this squeeze, with cap space, there hasn't been a ton of deals. I mean, there's a lot of teams sort of in similar spots as the Winnipeg Jets. And then, I mean, obviously they're sniffing around and in on some of these free agents. I mean, when a guy like Danton Heinen turns down more money from multiple teams and signs for 1 year and $1 million with the Pittsburgh Penguins to say with Sidney Crosby, I mean, you know what? Like, does anyone say you're going to throw $5 million at a guy and overpay? They'd get killed for that too. So I think there's a ton of things that are happening behind the scenes, and I don't expect. Listen, if we get to the start of training camp and this is as is, I'll be with you. But I don't know. I pump the brakes a little bit on that just because, hey, we talk about this stuff every day, so we have to live in the present. But no one's raising a banner at the end of July in the National Hockey League. You know what I'm saying?
No, you don't win it in July, but you can lose it in July. I think the Jets have lost it in July right now because there's not a whole lot of, like, where are the avenues for them to improve right now? And then you even said it there, like the Wheeler trade seems far-fetched at this point.
Well, the irony is, does the Wheeler trade make the team better?
It's tough to say.
Like, everyone wants it to happen, but I mean, okay, say you trade Blake Wheeler and, get a piece or something like that. You're not getting Blake Wheeler back. I really think that, all this talk about Blake Wheeler is to really boost that culture change that we've been talking about, to get a different atmosphere around it. But pound for pound, as far as what the guy brings on the ice, there's no chance they win a trade hockey-wise if you're getting Blake Wheeler out with his age and with what he's owed for the next 2 years.
That's fair, but in the sense of Wheeler, in the sense of Scheifele, and just bringing back the same leadership group, like this team tried to form a public mutiny with about 15 games to go in the season.
I agree.
You got rid of 2 coaches, 2 head coaches, and an entire coaching staff. And your answer to winning is, meh, try it again. I can't. It blows my mind. There's almost a level of arrogance to thinking that this team has enough talent to get it done, but for whatever reason, it's been the mix, right? Like it's the coaching this or this hasn't worked or that hasn't worked. We've seen teams that are leagues ahead of the Winnipeg Jets right now not sit on their laurels and go out there and make moves, aggressive ones. Now, whether or not they'll pay off or work, that remains to be seen. But the defending Cup champs just got rid of their starting goalie. The Tampa Bay Lightning traded one of their most important defensemen. The Florida Panthers, who have no cap space or assets, find a way to get Matthew freaking Tkachuk into the fold. And then the Calgary Flames, on the other end of the spectrum, find a way to, with apparently no leverage, take a guy that was on the way out and parlay that into a top-line winger and a top-pair defenseman. While I'll give you the Danton Heinen signing, that's the reality of being the Winnipeg Jets, right? Like you're going to make the better offer a lot of times on free agents, and you're going to lose because of the location. I do feel a ton of sympathy for Chevy and company with that because there's just nothing you can do there. But there are hundreds of players in the NHL that do not have no trade clauses, do not have no move clauses. There are other avenues to improve your team other than just trying to sign leftovers on the free agent market. And the fact that as it stands right now, it's more likely than not that the Winnipeg Jets are going to enter this season with the same group as last year that flamed out spectacularly. To me, that's a massive fail. And when you consider expectations and how transformation and everything was promised going into this year, that to me points to the worst offseason in team history because, you know what, there may have been more disastrous signings in other years, but I don't know how you can justify doing absolutely nothing and selling that to the fan base as there's optimism for us to get back to the playoffs again next year.
Hey, just quickly, I want to give a shout out to our guy, T. Kona Pauly. Pauly, thanks so much for that super chat and giving a shout out on behalf of my boy who crossed over the Rainbow Bridge, listened to every show with me, and never missed a Jets Bomber game. Love you, boy. Sorry to hear about that, Tony, and thanks very much for that. We certainly do appreciate it. Winnipeg Sports Talk, Brandon Rewucki of Skates and Plates is with us. Back to the situation, though, as is. And as I said, I would be stunned if there isn't some sort of movement. But with how difficult it is to make trades right now in the cap situation, I don't know how significant they'll be. And I don't think the Jets are the team that will make a move just for the sake of making a move to appease the public or try to, get off the front page or buy them a little bit of time. I do believe that they'll make those decisions based on, what they believe will make them better. But as difficult as that will be, and with the way this is trending right now, I'll say this. I think it's borderline unfair to Rick Bowness to expect him to come in as is and expect that he is going to be the guy almost single-handedly that's going to turn around what we saw at the end of last year into a team that actually plays up to the potential that so many people believe there is in that locker room.
It's an impossible task, right? Like I feel awful for it, to be honest. And there's the dysfunction inside the locker room. That's one thing that he's going to have to probably the first that he's going to have to deal with, quite honestly. Then there's instilling a defensive structure into a team that has been unable to play defense for 3, 4, 5 years now. And then you have the potential issue of, can we get enough ice time to all our guys? Like if Wheeler's coming back, well, you know what? Nikolai Ehlers has been the good soldier for a number of years now. A guy that's deserved first line ice time hasn't gotten it to this point. At what point does he start to make a fuss about not playing 20 plus minutes a night? Then you have,
well, I don't think there's any need to make listen, there's no way in the world that Rick Bowness comes in and just does the exact same thing that the previous guys did before. That can't happen, can it?
It shouldn't. But
I mean, you look at what he did with Robertson and Hintz as opposed to Ben and Sagan. I mean, the body of work is there. He's done that already in Dallas, and this situation screams for that in Winnipeg. I mean, I don't know how that could possibly be on the table, and I won't even personally entertain that until it happens, Brandon.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have entertained the same roster being brought back this season, yet we're a little ways, a month away from training camp or exhibition starting, and we're getting closer and closer to that. So I'm not going to throw anything out of the window just yet. But there's also like 3 major left-handed defensive prospects / full-time NHLers that are going to need playing time, and there's already 2 big-time veteran defensemen ahead of them in the depth chart. How are you going to find room for one of those guys, 2 of those guys? Let alone some of the defensemen that now need waivers to go through all that stuff. Like I don't know, of all the head coaches that have been signed this offseason, I'm with you there, where I would be hard pressed to find anybody that's been put in a tougher spot than Rick Bowness right now. Paul Maurice might have the most pressure on him because Florida they've pushed all their chips and they're throwing their shoes and their wallets and their car keys into the middle right now to try to win this year. He's probably got the most pressure to deliver results right now. But for Rick Bowness, I don't know if this is what he envisioned when he signed up for the head coaching job, and that, maybe there would have been a little bit more change and my life might have been made a little bit easier going into a challenging year.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I still do think there's the potential for one of those guys on the back end to be moved, and probably it's a money in, money out deal that potentially shifts some of the cap for the Jets from the blue line to the forward group. And then again, there's still a few guys kicking around as free agents. We've talked about Evan Rodriguez. Nice to get a right shot that can actually maybe do a few things offensively in Sonny Milano as well. But we went through that list earlier on, and I mean, as much as people love the headline of signing a guy for just money and not giving up any assets, there's not a lot of guys that are really moving the needle very much beyond those 2 guys. And Heinen was a guy that I think a lot of teams wanted. I still can't believe it. I mean, what that says about the market, or the fact that he just, really wants to be in Pittsburgh must be nice. 1 year, $1 million for an 18-goal scorer that had a lot of other things that he brings to the game. I mean, just goes to show the predicament that the Jets and many other teams are in right now as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing you can do there, right? Like, I don't know what they offered him. Maybe triple the salary, quadruple, right? Like, what else are you supposed to do if you're the Jets in that situation? He obviously just wants to play in Pittsburgh, which is a mistake because Pittsburgh sucks and the city's terrible, but nobody's perfect. But even like
Flyer guy has entered the chat.
But even a guy like Milano, while maybe not necessarily, front page of NHL.com, the Jets need to find guys that will fit in on their second or third lines. And he had a pretty damn sneaky good season last year. I know he played with Trevor Zegras for a lot of it, but all that tells me is he's a guy that can produce when he's played with pretty solid line mates, and he'll probably have one of those if he ultimately ends up signing in Winnipeg. So that, I mean, up front, there's still ways this team can find a guy or 2 to come in and solidify the middle 6. The blue line, I have no idea what the Jets are going to do on the blue line, though, man. Like I don't really know what the plan is right now. I have no idea what they want to do. I kind of have a sense of what they want to do up front. Like it's clear they want to add 1, maybe 2 pieces inside that top 9. Especially because Paul Stastny is 99% finding somewhere else to play next season. But on the back end, I don't really get a sense of what they want to do. And you would think that it has to be a trade of either a Brendan Dillon to open up some space for some of the youngsters to come in, or you move one of the youngsters to grab a forward up there and make this logjam a little easier to climb your way through here. So yeah, you would have hoped that these issues would have been figured out a month and a half ago. But I guess Chevy wants to go down to the wire for this one. Maybe we'll get an answer sometime in August.
Yeah, it wouldn't it be nice to have a little more clarity? But as I say, lots of intrigue for guys like us that talk about this team all the time. Hey, you mentioned last Friday's deal between Florida and Calgary. Want to get your thoughts on that? And for the Florida Panthers, as exciting a player as Matthew Tkachuk is, and they've locked him up over the course of, basically through his prime. Are the Panthers better now than they were before they made that trade?
No, not even close. You can't even if you like the trade for Florida, you can't make that argument. But what they did do was get cost certainty for the next 7-8 years, right? Like that's the trade-off that they're making there. When the trade first off, can we get more of this? Like, can we get these NBA like trades a couple times a year? That was my first thought. This is just fun. Like, it's just awesome to have something like this pop up on a Friday night out of nowhere. But I at first thought Florida completely got fleeced. And after a couple days, it went from a fleecing to you lose the trade, but I can also kind of understand their reasoning behind it, right? Where you probably get it's one of the rare trades where you get the best player in the trade and you lose the trade. But it also makes sense because you might not have Hubert or Uyghur 1 year from now. At the very least, you get Matthew Tkachuk for the next pretty much decade. But what's fascinating to me about this deal is that I feel like Mackenzie Weegar was a throw-in. And when is a top pair defenseman ever a throw-in? Like, I thought if the deal was Hubert Owen a first, I'd be like, that's pretty good. Like, to get that for a guy that everybody knew you had to move, that's not bad. And then you figure what you have with Huberto, and maybe you move him and get more picks on top of it. But Mackenzie freaking Weegar is a borderline top 10, top 20 defenseman.
He's a stud.
Right now, like, he's a major stud.
Plop him in the one spot here.
He would have walked right in. And now Calgary arguably has the best D-core in the entire NHL. Like 1 through 6, they're loaded. Just loaded. And then you have a top 10 goalie in Jacob Markstrom and one of the better defensive coaches in the game right now in Sutter. And all of a sudden, Calgary's like, maybe we take a run at this one. So I love the deal from a Flames perspective. I get it from Florida's point of view, but they're definitely worse this upcoming season. And I don't know how they can find a way to improve that D-core, which is thin all of a sudden, because I don't think they have a first-round pick until 2048.
Well, I was just about to say, my favorite part of the entire deal is the fact that for so long, so many people around here had bitched about how Maurice had handled the young players and the top prospects on the first-round picks. They don't need to worry about that in Florida for the entire time in his career. They won't even be showing up to the draft on the first night.
It's so true, yeah. When you look at Florida's roster, right, up front, they're great, but I don't know, man. Like, are they where do they stack up in the NHL right now? Like, are they a top 5 team after trading a number 1 defenseman away? Like, I don't know if they're at the level that they were this past season. So that's why Florida is clearly the most intriguing team going into this year, right? Because if they start off, I don't know, 500, something like that, 30 games into what do you do? What do you do? Like, you've already played all your chips at that point if you're management. So I'm fascinated to see how that plays out. And it's happening in the toughest division in all of hockey. And the Senators, surprisingly, are kind of this like dark horse sleeper team. Wouldn't it be something if Ottawa jumped ahead of Florida all of a sudden and the Panthers are just battling for a playoff spot? It's crazy.
Brady Tkachuk giving it to brother Matthew in his new home. Might be a little colder in Ottawa, but I'll say this. Pierre Dorion, raise the banner right now. They are off-season champs. They are off-season champs. There's no doubt about it. They've done it. Hey, listen, before we go, I know you've been paying attention to these Hockey Canada hearings in Ottawa. This is a story, and again, it's not unique to hockey, but I think it has probably been more prevalent, and certainly the profile, especially of the junior program, and the fact that these 2 incidents now have been locked to it. But did you see much of yesterday's proceedings in Ottawa? And what do you expect? I am so fascinated as to what this World Junior Hockey Championship is like. Don't forget, that starts in 2 weeks, from the 9th to the 20th. And they were quite clear, this is a IIHF event. This is not a Hockey Canada event. They're 1 of 10 teams. But with the black cloud around that office, and Scott Smith, who did his best to answer the questions. He's only taken over for 4 weeks as the head guy, but he's been there for the better part of 30 years. There's unprecedented times. I can't remember anything like this, and something that was really seen as the pinnacle of sport and organizations in our country doing such a 180 as to where they are right now and what happened the last couple of days.
Yeah, I kind of followed along on Twitter for the most part. I didn't watch any of it live, but I mean, for me, it's pretty cut and dry. I don't need to, speak a whole lot about this. Anything less than the resignation of anybody that was in charge over these, like if anybody in a position of power, out the door. Like that's it. Plain and simple. Like the fact that this went on for this long, and there was a fund, like a freaking fund, put in place to settle claims like this. It's beyond despicable. Like it's disgusting, and I don't know at this point how it could be anything less than having a complete overhaul of the entire structure of Hockey Canada, because it's poison. It's poison, and to have anybody that was in power then still working with that organization now, despite what they might say and a call to action and anything like that, it would be shameful for any of them to still have a job with Hockey Canada.
The thing that really worries me, and I'm not sure if you caught, but I mean, Marie-Philippe Poulin put out a letter on behalf of the women's national team, and then a number of her teammates had put that out as well. And I mean, there's a lot of angles to this, because as much as, people are, angry and they kind of focus on the men's program and in particular, these incidents involving the World Juniors, Hockey Canada is the steward of the game at every level: amateur sports, sledge hockey, and of course, women's program. And the women's team has been the pinnacle of it. I mean, the rivalry with the United States is one of the greatest in sports. They've had so many incredible highlights and have built the game really through a few generations of incredible women. And if the funding is cut, but also the sponsors back away from Hockey Canada, that'll be an effect on the World Juniors and, some of the things they're able to do for that big tournament. But the trickle-down effect is real for this. And there is a real concern that for things like our incredible women's program, they could be incredibly impacted through absolutely no doing of their own.
Yeah, that's like the domino effect with this is also horrendous, and that people that aren't involved are the ones that might end up feeling the most repercussions out of this, right? So I don't know what the right answer is, right? Like I get why sponsors would want to pull out. Like I don't know how you would want to be associated with the Hockey Canada brand right now with all the stuff that's going on out there. But at the same time, it hurts the grassroots programs, as I guess specifically and mainly the women's game the most, which is a shame in and of itself. But like I mentioned, and I know Sheldon Kennedy, who probably has one of the most prominent voices on the matter right now in the hockey world, at least. I'll follow his lane right now, and you know what? Maybe sponsors can come back once you clean house, and once there's a new leadership group put in place and actual signs of progress and change, then everything can kind of hopefully come back to normal. So some of the other programs, as opposed to all the issues that are going on with the men's program right now, but some of the other programs can at least thrive and survive in the time being.
Yeah, well, when they do blow it up, and it seems like it's all been inevitable that happens. I mentioned yesterday, I mean, Haley Wickenheiser, she's a doctor. She's now on the Leafs staff. I mean, she would be at the top of my list. Jennifer Botterill as well. I mean, women like that are not only brilliant and involved in the game, but Olympic champions, know what it's like to build teams, but also know how important it is for all the things that maybe get a little less attention than things like the World Junior. Those are the voices that we don't just need contributing to it, but literally part of that governance, whether it be on the board or whether it be in some of the most impactful jobs in the country. And I certainly hope that that's something that will come out of this going forward. You cranking out another pod going into August long, talking about what hasn't happened, like we've just discussed.
Yeah, another episode on what hasn't happened so far. We'll get into that. It should come out tomorrow. I will say, if I can just make a quick plug here.
Please do.
Friday night, 5 to 10 in the Exchange. I'm going to be at the Alleyway Market, and I'll be in a booth with my wife. My wife's company is selling some absolutely gorgeous, beautiful trays and coaster sets and all these kind of floral things. So you want to drop by and say hi and maybe buy it's a little early for Christmas, but it's never there's always a good reason to gift your significant other a floral coaster set or tray.
So fill me. So where is this again? This is in the Exchange on Friday night?
Yeah, at the Exchange. It's called the Alleyways Market, and it's 5 to 10 p.m.
Excellent. Well, I'm thinking of maybe popping by the ball game. So maybe either before or afterwards. Won't be too far away from that. And fire out something on Twitter as well for that. So if people were forgetting where it is. But well, listen, hopefully that goes well. Nice to see your wife's putting you to work and you're, helping out for a change,
Yeah, I'm actually useful again.
Make it happen, dude. Hey, listen, great chat, man. Thanks for doing this, and we'll catch up next week.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
So there you go. Friday night, pop by and see Brandon in the Exchange at the Alleyway Market, and of course, subscribe to Skates and Plates wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Don't forget, folks, we're going to talk Bombers. Patty Neufeld on deck, and then stick around. The Wheel of Winners will get fired up on WST. We've got some tickets for the big Valor FC game against Pacific on Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m., courtesy of our friends at Canadian Club. Before we do that, a big shout out to the gang over at Knott Auto Corp, great sponsors of the Bombers, and of course, golf in Manitoba, just finishing up the Knott Auto Corp Amateur. But the bread and butter of Knott is putting Manitobans into amazing vehicles at incredible prices. Why not get into the car of your dreams at the best price around with the help of the Knott team? Pop down and see them at Waverly and McGilvery, or check them online at knott.ca. Hey, long weekend just about here, and our friends at Little Brown Jug have you covered with an amazing deal. Buy 2 Good Times variety packs down at the brewery and tap room on William Avenue, and you'll get a $15 gift card, which you can be used online or in person for a couple pints down at Little Brown Jug. So 2 Good Times variety packs with 4 different great Little Brown Jug beers in each. You'll get a $15 gift card. Offer now available until July 31st at midnight. You know where to do it. Little Brown Jug. And by the way, a little tease for you. I'll probably officially announce this next week, but going to be doing another little pseudo WST get together, a sports trivia night at Little Brown Jug next month, hosted by yours truly. We'll let you know about that next week. And Little Brown Jug in the Exchange and online at littlebrownjug.ca. Our friends at Canadian Club, great sponsors of the Bombers, and of course Valor FC. Just mentioned at the end of the program, we've got some tickets to give away for the game coming up. But with the long weekend just around the corner, you make sure that you pop by your local beer store and get hooked up with some of the drink of the summer, the new Canadian Club and Ginger Ale ready-to-drink cocktail available in 6-packs. And of course, that and all the great Canadian Club products available at your local Manitoba liquor marts and at IG Field on Saturday for the soccer game. And of course, when the Bombers are back taking on the Montreal Alouettes on August 11th as the official spirit of the blue and gold. So stick around for the ticket giveaway from Canadian Club a little later on. We'll do that right away. But we got some Bombers to talk about. And speaking of the Bombers, you'll be able to have a few of those CC and Gingers out at the Princess Auto tailgate party before each and every game. 2 hours before game time, things get going. $5 beers, $3.50 hot dogs and pop, DJ Finesse spinning, prizes from the Princess Auto crew. There's no better place to get warmed up for kickoff than with Princess Auto and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at the Princess Auto tailgate zone. And of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsor of the blue and gold, and the spot where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Visit them at Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, the 2 Winnipeg locations, or shop online 24/7, 365. All right, let's get ready for Saturday. 7-0 Bombers, 4-1 Stamps, McMahon Stadium, 6 o'clock. And Pat Neufeld of the Blue and Gold joins us now on WST. Patty Neufeld from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Patty, what's up, man? It's great to have you back on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Looking forward to this.
How's it feeling around the team? Couple days of practice coming off listen, a win's a win, and you guys have done a lot of it, but one of the weirdest W's that you guys have put together over the course of the last few years. Where's everyone at today coming out of practice?
They're good. You know, guys are getting back to normal and feeling good, ready to roll against a really good Calgary team, you know, who's coming off a bye, which is always tough. But yeah, that Edmonton game was a gritty win. I think it was kind of a 3-phase win for us, and we're pretty lucky we had the defense we had that game.
Well, I mean, the defense has been, I mean, such a huge part of the championship ID of this Winnipeg team. But listen, the offense has been rolling so far this season, but it was very strange. I mean, the Bombers never lose the turnover battle. They did in that game. And the time of possession, I mean, did it feel like you were basically on the bench most of the game on that last Friday?
It did. I mean, I think we only had 39 plays on offense, excluding our 2 meals. So film was short for us the next day, which was kind of nice. But yeah, I think in the third quarter, we were only on the field for like 4 snaps or something like that. So, I mean, kudos to Edmonton. They did a great job of possessing the ball and using the play clock as best they could. But, you know, our defense was stout when they needed to be and didn't let them in the end zone.
I have to imagine that even in a game where the offense might not be clicking at the rate that you are accustomed to, there's an incredible level of confidence. Even when you're sitting on the sidelines knowing what Willie and Big Hill and the guys are doing on the defensive side of the football. And even if a team is getting some first downs and moving the football, as soon as they're getting into your zone, you know, you better get ready to get back on the football because it's probably coming back to you soon.
Yeah, you know, our defense always preaches turning the ball over, getting us the ball back, and you know, they're just so gritty and so dynamic. They can do a lot of things that make that part of the field really tough. You know, kind of when you get past the 40, defense has changed to just keep you out of the kick zone or keep you from getting close. So our defense does a really great job of that, and you know, they're just, you guys have seen it for the last couple of years now, where they're able to fly around, make plays and make things really tough on the quarterback. So it was great for us, especially as an offense that wasn't on the field for a long time.
Now, offensively so far, I mean, listen, no one's critiquing a 7-0 perfect start to the season. But I'm sure inside that room, you're always looking at things that you can do better and always trying to improve. I mean, looking at the body of work for the offense as a whole, how would you categorize the start just specifically from the offensive performance this season, with some highs and some, maybe not as highs despite winning each and every game you played?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And it's something that we're trying to level out, where we're either really high with the pass game or we're lower with the run game. So we want to kind of bring that back and kind of get back to the identity we've had in years past, where we can really, effectively run the football, and that opens things up in the pass game and the play action game. So we just have to do a better job up front of communicating and kind of recognizing how teams are not just going to kind of play us in a base 4-2 defense anymore. They're going to move, they're going to stunt, they're going to send guys from the secondary to try and stop the run. So we just have to do a better job of that. And teams have done a good job of it. So it's up to us in our offensive line room and our backs to get that corrected.
Well, that's a great kind of segue into the running game. I mean, obviously, you miss Andrew Harris, who's an all-time CFL legend. There's huge shoes to fill for young running backs that have a lot of pressure on their backs. So much of the running game, though, is more than the guys getting the football. It's the guys up front. Have you guys been seeing a lot of different looks? I mean, through 7 games, are teams game planning for you guys a little bit differently because of, how different the team looks without Andrew here?
I'm not 100% sure what they're doing in their room or what they're talking about, but I think teams are just doing a really great job across the league of playing the run. They have there's some copycat stuff that goes from team to team, or what one team finds successful, another team might try and fit into their scheme. So I think teams are doing just a better job across the board of playing the run and, kind of eliminating those explosive plays that get down the field.
I want to ask you about a game in particular, and it's a couple games ago against BC. And I think, coming out of the game against Toronto, I mean, it was a short week. You're traveling across the country. There's a lot of things that, could have been put forth as reasons why it would be tough to have, your best performance. And yet, honestly, that game, top to bottom, was one of the best of the season. But what really stood out to me was the way the big boys up front, you and the guys on the offensive line, as well as Brady and Johnny in the running game, established it in the first quarter. I mean, I remember tweeting out, I'm just looking at the numbers. The Bombers had more rushing yards in the first quarter of that game than they had in the entire game against Toronto the Monday before. Is that almost the blueprint that you guys would love to execute more often than not, where you establish the running game? And when you're able to do that, how much more rope does that give a player like Zach Collaros to maybe pick apart the opposing defense like he did against BC in that game?
Yeah, that's exactly it. We love being able to run the football. It's kind of a pride thing. It's also a way to control the football. It gives us kind of a presence and an identity back where we can play physical and we can run off the ball and start to dictate. So that's definitely something we want to be able to try and expand on or continue going forward. For whatever reason, maybe it was the short week where we just kind of had you can't complain about it because you can't change it mentality. So maybe that's something we got to carry forward, even with a longer break between games. But, having an effective running game definitely does open things up. It just makes your offense dynamic. It allows you to do a lot of things, whether you can play action, you can throw the quick game, you can go to empty and do things like that, or you can bring guys back into the box. So it's definitely valuable.
I want to just ask you about the overall feeling of the team. I mean, it's pretty clear you guys are quite happy with the wins and losses so far. But it also happens at a time when, you guys have played 7 games so far. Calgary's 4-1, BC's 4-1. They both had 2 byes already, and you guys have been able to do it. I mean, at this point, it has been certainly the most stressful part of the schedule. You've got the job done on the field. How are you feeling right now going into Calgary with another huge test for another team that's coming off a bye and will be rested and ready for you, despite what I guess we're hearing? They've got some challenges this week off the field with some guys getting sick.
Well, I think you said it best. Calgary coming off the bye is always tough. And I think our mindset has been, this is a big one. This is one that is going to take absolutely everyone who's dressed on the roster that game day to get a win. Playing in Calgary is always hard too. So, we kind of knew it in July when we went over our team calendar that this is going to be a grinder of a month, and we've kind of just put our head down and really kind of been like a racehorse with the blinders on, where we're just solely focused on not even that game, but just that day that we're currently in. So I think that mentality has really allowed us to be successful, where we're not looking too far ahead. We're really just focused on being as best we can that day, and then we stack those days coming to game day where, we're able to go and be successful. I also have to give a shout out to our training staff and our coaching staff, where they are really aware of how we're feeling physically and do a great job of taking care of our bodies.
I'm glad you mentioned, certainly shout out to the trainers, Brad, the guys. You want to talk about unsung heroes amongst a team, especially with the schedule you've had. I imagine this has been as stressful on them as anybody behind the scenes. But when it comes to the coaching staff and the messaging of Mike O'Shea, we've talked about it for years, the way he's sort of built this culture. It's a no excuses mantra. But at the same time, you correct me if I'm wrong, but him being a former player, he knows the stress that this sort of a schedule puts on you guys. And I would imagine sort of creates a schedule for you practice-wise to try to give you the best chance to bottom line be as healthy and ready as possible when kickoff comes.
That's exactly it. No one goes a full season without feeling bumps and bruises or being 100%. So I think Osh and our training staff understand that, and they put a premium on us feeling as best as we possibly can on game day. So there's also an onus on us as players and as a veteran team to really dig into the mental side of the game and make sure we're getting into the details of how we're going to beat our opponent within our own scheme. We have to make sure we can't have any sort of mistakes. We have to be able to effectively communicate so guys are all on the same page. And I think that's been a big reason why we've been successful over these last, grinder weeks, because we've been able to do those things.
Patty Neufeld's with us from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Stamps and Bombers, 6 o'clock on Saturday night. And of course, as we talked with DT yesterday, OB will get the pregame show going on at 4 o'clock p.m. As far as the offensive line goes, there's been a few nicks and bruises. A couple guys have missed games. You've had some younger players. Tell us about the newcomers and how they've fit in and how they've contributed to the 7-0 start.
They've been great. We've had, Chris Kolankowski, who has played for the Argonauts before, and then he was with us last year and got some meaningful play time in the playoffs and in the Grey Cup. So he's a veteran just like us, and he has fit in extremely well since the moment we had our first virtual meeting in the COVID year. So he's been awesome, and he's really taken control of making sure we're all on the same page as an offensive line. He does a great job in the film room and studying, so we're all on the same page as him. And then, we have our draft pick, Liam Dobson, who's a great guy, who's fit in really well with us. A funny kid who has some attributes that really make him a successful football player on the field for us. And he's bought into our mentality of a physical, tough football team and offensive line.
He was the one that we were showing the video of him dunking a basketball, wasn't he?
It's crazy, yeah.
He is. I mean, the offensive line position for so long, it was just, really big dudes that take up a lot of space. But, at the NFL level and at the CFL level, it's foot speed, it's footwork, it's a mental game. There's so much more that goes into being really good at that position and playing at a high level than probably most fans realize, huh, Patty?
Oh, absolutely. It's not, like you said, not just being a big fat guy taking up space anymore. We're running, sideline to sideline, and we're trying to block, freak guys like Mike Rose or Florino or Malde on the edge there for Calgary. So you can't just, rely on things you've done in the past either. And I think that's something that Liam is really starting to learn, where he can't just do the things he did in college anymore. And he's experiencing the speed and the physicality, and something as so small as not getting enough width on your first step as an offensive lineman can, lose you the block. So he's working really hard and doing a great job of getting himself better each week to make us successful up front.
Hey, speaking of newcomers and rookies, we had Dalton Schoen on the program last week and had a great conversation with him. Hopefully got a little bump, so that'll mean a huge game for you as well on Saturday. But 146 yards. It wasn't a game that was all about the passing game, but man, when Zach connected, they made the team pay. What have you noticed from him, and what's he been like as a new player and a rookie coming here in the first time and being in that huddle?
I think off the bat has just been his confidence since day one. He's not a cocky guy. He's extremely humble, but he is confident in his skills, and he's really picked up our offense very quickly. And I think that has allowed him to have Zach's trust, and Zach now trusts him, so they can be on the same page and make those throws that you guys are seeing down the field. So he's been awesome, and he's another guy who's fit in right away and really helped our offense out.
Hey, Patty, before we go, of course, the schedule will be, practice today, walk through tomorrow and travel, and then the game on Saturday. How much more difficult is it for especially the veteran players that have a lot of miles on the odometer, if you will, playing those short weeks that you guys have actually already have in the rearview mirror, like you had with that schedule with 3 games in 11 days and really very little practice in between games?
I think it's a double-edged sword where because we are veteran and our coaching staff has put a great deal of trust in us, that they afford us the opportunity to maybe do some more walkthroughs and not have as physical practice. But on the other side, we really have to make sure we're locked into the mental side of things and be really in tune with the game plan, because us not getting all the physical reps on the field, we have to be able to make up for it mentally. So we really try to hold ourselves accountable within our room, within the locker room, within position groups, and make sure everyone knows exactly what those details are and why we're going to win.
Hey, of course, you guys will be in Calgary on the weekend. I do know a few Bomber fans that are making the trip out. They'll be repping the blue and gold there in enemy territory. But it's sort of a weird sked. With as much as you guys are playing, we're going almost a month between games at IG Field. August 11th, Montreal will be back in the stands. But how about that crowd on the 15th against Calgary? That game overall was such a thriller. But honestly, the atmosphere in that crowd outside the West Final, which is a memory I think all of us will be remember for a long time. That was as good of a regular season crowd as I can remember in a long time. And was it loud in the fourth quarter when the game was on the line?
It was unbelievable. I can't say enough good things about our crowd in general, but and our fans, but that game was amazing. Like you said, I think the West Final is special for fans and players, no doubt, from last year. But that game was sensational. Hearing the crowd go off like they did and making things difficult on Levi is unbelievable. And just that extra little bit of juice that we have looking around and seeing the the entire place packed and people partying up in the north end zone is pretty sweet.
Well, I'll say this. I know the West Final's a long ways away, and you guys, being the professionals you are, focusing on the next practice and the next game. But I think everyone realizes that a win in Calgary this weekend to go 2-0 against the Stamps into 8-0 would go a long, long way to book in that West Final for IG Field come November.
No doubt. Every, in a Western Conference like this, every win is big, every game is big. So it's going to be a serious tilt out there, and I think it's what the fans are really excited to see.
Patty, keep on kicking ass. Thanks so much for doing this. We'll look forward to finally getting back and seeing you guys at home on the 11th. But in the meantime, good luck in Calgary on Saturday night. We hope to be talking about an 8-0 team next week on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right, good stuff with Patty Neufeld. Great to see him back at practice today. And, cannot wait for the game Saturday night, 6 p.m. Winnipeg time from Calgary. Now, as I mentioned, we have a big soccer game. Valor FC and Pacific playing Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. Great sports day. Home game for the soccer team, and then watch the Bombers on the road. And we've got some tickets to give away. Just before we do that, a big thanks to our friends at Assiniboia Downs, and congratulations. A big announcement today on the Manitoba Derby coming up next week. Going to see if Darren Dunn wants to jump on with us tomorrow and sort of tee up the biggest race of the year out at Assiniboia Downs. But, of course, ASD is live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. post time. And the Derby always coming on August long weekend. So we got the big one coming up this Monday. And we'll talk about it more tomorrow in the program. You can find out more online at asdowns.com. Man, I spent some time at BP last night watching the Blue Jays. Always a great spot to get together with the fellas. There was 11 guys sitting together with an inflatable Stanley Cup, a post-party celebrating the winner of their playoff draft. But hey, if you're getting together with the gang, no better place to do it than Boston Pizza. Check out their happy hour specials and everything on the summer menu, including the new Carnitas pizza and tacos. Pizza flights are back as well. And, of course, you can always check out their game day deals and order online at bostonpizza.com. And a great day to get out to Nick and Nicky DQ. This weekend is going to be Nick and Nicky DQ weather. It looks like it's going to be sunny and 30 on Saturday. Perfect day for the soccer game and perfect day to check out Nick and Nicky at DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, or DQ St. Anne's. 3 Winnipeg locations actually available right now on all the delivery apps. But pop in for yourself, grab a blizzard, grab one of those delicious new stack burgers. And, of course, if you got a party coming up this weekend or just want to make the most of summer with a delicious DQ ice cream cake. If you'd like to get one custom made, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll get a custom made for you and have it ready to pick up for you quick and easy at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQ locations. All right, Remo, we'll get to the Coolbet lines in a minute, but why don't we welcome in everybody in the chat to fire up a what do we want to do? Exclamation mark tickets for the game on Saturday. So Saturday, 2 p.m. Got a couple pairs courtesy of our friends at Canadian Club. Great seats. I think I'm going to be out there at the game as well. I love these games. I mean, I love going to the Gold Eyes. I'm going to do that probably tonight and tomorrow. Have Saturday be the soccer and Bomber game day, and then maybe get back to the ballpark for the Sunday afternoon game for the Winnipeg Gold Eyes. But it's open right now. If you'd like to go to the game, put in exclamation mark tickets. We'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll spin the wheel, I guess, twice. And we'll get a couple of you to get out and check out Valor FC if you haven't already before. It should be lots of fun. All right, CFL week begins tonight. Montreal and Hamilton. And lo and behold, I said on the lock shop, just wait till we get closer to game time. We should be able to get 3 points on the Montreal Alouettes. And that's exactly the situation right now. Montreal +3 on the road. Hamilton a 3-point road favorite. And Montreal +126 to win the game on the money line. Tomorrow night's game, I'm a little surprised that this game hasn't maybe moved a little bit more. BC still 1.5-point favorites against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Riders still dealing with a number of injuries, including Cody Fajardo. Although I certainly don't think he's been ruled out, because if he was, I think that number would significantly move up. So BC -1.5 on the road at Mosaic tomorrow against the Riders. And Saturday night, Remo, Bombers still holding tight as 1-point favorites, but this game on the money line is back to a straight up pick 'em, -110. Either way, flip a coin. But that being said, don't flip a coin against the Bombers, because that won't make you money. They've been making a lot of people a little bit of scratches. They've been supporting them week in and week out. Certainly on the money line, not always against the spread. But this one essentially even money either way, -110 both sides. And that's exactly what you want from a marquee game like this one.
Yeah, Cody Fajardo is starting for Saskatchewan. Even still, BC, I mean, a couple weeks ago was the best team. Nathan Rourke was best quarterback, but I still think he's great. So -1.5 for BC does seem low. This Bomber game, we're kind of waiting and seeing about the offense. Greg Ellingson didn't practice today, so I mean, it's still hard to bet against the Bombers. They find a way to win every time, but I'm kind of leaning Calgary at home. Kadeem Carey didn't practice earlier this week because of COVID and pneumonia. I'm not sure. They just wrote illness on the depth chart, but he practiced today. And we saw what Kadeem Carey did the other day against the Bombers here, running for over 100 yards. So it's we got the lines here. The Argos, who Christopher Med in chat says, how are the Argos not favored? They're favored by 5.5.
Yeah, Argos 5.5-point favorite. That number has not moved at all throughout the week, and I think I'm going to lay the points with Toronto. I'm just out on Ottawa. The quarterback situation's a disaster. The team is undisciplined. They take bad penalties. They do themselves no favors, and unfortunately, I think that's really cranking up the hot seat under Paul LaPolice. So you've got that. The Live Golf is available for tomorrow. Feinberg yesterday got us on old Bryson DeChambeau. He's at 10-1. Dustin Johnson is the favorite. So you can bet on that. And of course, tonight, let's just see what the Blue Jays are. They're opening up this series against the Detroit Tigers. -217 for the Blue Jays, and still -115 on the run line to win by 2. If you've never used Coolbet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200. All right, last call. Anyone else want to get in on these Valor tickets? Exclamation mark tickets. That's all you need to do. And Remo, I guess whenever you want, let's wrap that up, and let's spin the wheel and get a couple people set up for Saturday afternoon. Valor FC Pacific, 2 p.m. at IG Field.
Sure. As we wrap it up, we do have some breaking jersey news. This was a big deal for me, not for you apparently, but anyone who's into jerseys is going to want to hear this one. Greg Wyshynski with the exclusive report right now. Adidas won't seek to renew NHL uniform and apparel deal after the 23-24 season. They brought in the reverse retros. They came with their new prime green. They replaced Reebok in 27-18. They did the World Cup of Hockey jerseys in 2016. Greg says Adidas was paying double the $35 million that Reebok was paying. I preferred the Reebok jerseys. I actually don't own any of the Adidas ones, but I wonder if whoever new comes in, they do some redesign. I know, remember Reebok had a big redesign when they came in. So did Adidas. Big reveal. I remember the Jets jerseys were exactly the same, but there were some other minor tweaks. So I wonder what that means for
anyone
apparel.
but Fanatics. Anyone but
Fanatics has taken over the jersey world. Nike's got the baseball ones now. So I'm not sure. And Derek Schmidt, he says, so you know what this means now that they're changing the jerseys. So many deals on jerseys are going to be coming. Because they're going to look to clear out the Adidas and bring in whoever the new one is. So I see Real Sports in chat. I guess they'll have to prepare for a entirely new jersey. So I'm curious what's going to happen there. I found that
but I mean, I'm
interesting.
sure I don't know when that deal ends, but I mean, I know
23, 24, a couple years.
Okay, so there's there's going to be new reverse retros coming up this year. Hopefully, there's some cool ones that we can enjoy here for the Jets and obviously the other teams in and around the league. And then we'll worry about what's new after we get what's new this year when there is
it's not for a couple of years, yeah. So we still have this season and next season. So 2 years remaining on the expiring jersey contract.
You got it. Okay, quick NFL note. I had a great morning. I was just checking in on Chiefs camp. Juju Smith-Schuster looks amazing. He and Patrick Mahomes are clicking big time. But Carlos Dunlap signs a 1-year deal on the Chiefs defensive line. That's a nice ad for Kansas City. We'll start doing some more training camp reports over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks. Try and go around the league. And I'm very happy to say the NFL Notebook is back with Hacksaw. Lee Hacksaw Hamilton's going to join us tomorrow. We'll also have Murat Atesh on the program. Really looking forward to having Murat. Lots to get to with him coming out of Monday with Pierre-Luc Dubois, latest on the Jets offseason. And hoping to have Eddie Tate as well. We will certainly set up to the Saturday's Bomber game between the Stampeders and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and hoping to have Darren Dunn pop by as well and set up the Manitoba Derby heading into the long weekend. All right, Remo, let's get these names into the wheel of winners. We'll spin them twice. Whoever wins, folks, you will just quickly send us an email at winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. And then let us know what email you want me to send the tickets to, and I will fire you a pair after you win. So, Remo, let's see who wants to go to the soccer game, and hopefully we can make some people get some plans set up for them on what's going to be a gorgeous afternoon on Saturday.
Here we go.
All right, Wheel of Winners. Good luck, everybody, and thanks again for popping in. Let's do the first spin, Remo, and we'll see who is our first of 2 winners today, courtesy of our friends and proud sponsors of Valor FC and the Bombers Canadian Club. All right, what do we have here? First winner is the WST Hollywood Audio Gremlin. Oh, way to go. WST Hag. The Audio Gremlin. Okay, great. So there's 1 pair for WST Audio Gremlin and 1 more spin, Remo. Who do we got? It's ending up with Schickster. Oh, it's Giovanni, so close. All right, Schickster. Congratulations. All right, WST Audio Gremlin, Schickster, send us a quick email at winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com, and I will send you those tickets, and hopefully we'll see you at the game. 2 p.m. start for Valor FC taking on Pacific on Saturday afternoon. Great show today. I am looking forward to kicking off the CFL tonight. We should mention still time to get in our weekly DraftKings contest. Where are we at now with that one, Remo? I just got in. I'm glad you reminded me. Everyone else probably needs a reminder as well.
Yeah, if you want to play CFL Fantasy with us, we have a DraftKings League. What is it, a $3 entry? We've been getting about 40 people in each week, and as I check, I think we got about around 30 right now, 32 right now, and I'll throw the link in the chat to join our league. So we do what? NFL's coming up. We're gonna have some huge NFL. We're gonna be able to do 100 people contest for sure in NFL.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
and then hockey as well, and golf majors. But I guess major season is done.
Well, we're going to the FedEx Cup. I'll probably fire. I'm usually the guy that opens up the golf contest, but we'll certainly do that for the first event in the FedEx Cup, I'd say, when we get the full 125, and maybe do it right through the playoffs as well. I love golf on DraftKings, but tonight it's about the Canadian Football League. As we mentioned in the Coolbet lines, Montreal now a 3-point underdog. I'm riding with the Alouettes tonight. I'm going to take the points and see if they can get the W on the road. And as I said, tomorrow, big show. We will talk with Murat. We will set up the Bombers and Stamps, and we will have our first trip around NFL training camps with Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. And by the way, before we go, Gold Eyes fans, Michael Remis making a special guest star appearance on, what is it, the American Association's Facebook page tonight during the Fish Dogs game?
Yeah, check this out. My name is mentioned in an same graphic as Reggie Abercrombie and Taylor Allen of the Winnipeg Free Press. So tonight, Facebook.
This is an all-time moment for you.
This is what dreams are made of right here. Facebook game of the week: Goldeyes versus the Chicago Dogs. I will be featured on the second and third innings with Carter, Woodiel. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. Am I going to be doing color? He says it's going to be like the Manning cast. I'm not sure. So tune in to the Facebook game of the week. I got to study up on everyone's OPS on the Goldeyes, slugging percentage, all the strikeout to walk ratio. I got to study up on my Goldeyes for tonight, but I'm looking forward to. Might have to do a different background. I don't think a background of hockey jerseys. I'll have to put all my baseball jerseys or something back there. So tune in on Facebook tonight, American Association channel. I'll be on there. You'll be at the game.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the game tonight. I'm going to try and get to a bunch of these games. I haven't been out as much as I would have liked. In the first couple games, like first couple days of this series, weather hasn't been too great. I know they had a delay last night. So tonight, tomorrow, Sunday, Saturday, though, I'm going to be doubling up with Valor FC in the afternoon, and then the evening popping out with some of the gang to watch the Bombers hopefully get to 8-0 against the Calgary Stampeders. All right, gang, that is going to do it for us. Have a great night tonight. Again, WST Audio Gremlin and Schickster, send us those emails, winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. We'll get you set up for those Valor tickets. And of course, in addition to everything we just promised, tomorrow, Friday, you know what that means. Marbles at the end of the show, so do not miss it. Thanks to all the sponsors that support Winnipeg Sports Talk, and mostly thanks of all to you for making us a part of your day. Hit the red subscribe button if you haven't already. Tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk, and we'll see you tomorrow to kick off the long weekend at 1 o'clock right here on WST.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.